Welcome back to another video. My name is Toasty Thunder, and today I want to talk about a mobile game I found called Punishing Gray Raven. It's an unusual game. It's an action RPG with more emphasis on the action side, with three main mechanics that define its combat system. First, it's a team-based game, where you make teams of three. Usually you have an attacker, support, and a tank. In the context of this game, an attacker is usually the character you have out most often, and the other character is most often being used for assists. Think of a multiple character fighting game like Marvel vs. Capcom or Dragon Ball FighterZ. Your tanks are used to apply debuffs to your enemies, which will increase how much damage they take from your team, and supports have some sort of healing ability that can be activated with their assist. The second mechanic is called Matrix Mode, which is a universal time slow for any character. This universal ability allows for combat to keep a fast pace while creating slowdown times for when you'll be able to punish the enemy. You activate the Matrix Mode with a well-timed dodge, very reminiscent of Bayonetta's Witch Time. There's an internal cooldown to when you can next activate the Matrix Mode, so you don't end up just living in the time stop mode, but you still activate it a lot, and it's very cool and very useful. The last mechanic of the game is how you use your abilities. You use your abilities in almost a Bejeweled type system, and with this weird simple gimmick, this game gets so creative in creating just a wide diversity of characters and playstyles. This orb system is so cool, because it so uniquely takes the advantage of the fact that it's a mobile game. The way it works is that each character has three different abilities, represented by red, blue, and yellow orbs. If you can line up three orbs of the same colors in a row though, you get a bonus damage for that ability. Or sometimes it just changes the ability entirely. So you're trying to use the abilities while trying to line up three in a row, and it's just enough to worry about for a mobile game's combat system. Then throw in an assortment of different passive effects, like certain characters wanting to hit certain colors in a certain order, or something along those lines, and you can create a stunning array of playstyles that all feel unique and different. On a mobile device, it's pretty easy to still control the camera, although not perfect, and ping the orbs with your fingers. You can play on PC, and they do have a PC client for it. You can even play with the controller, but I find it very awkward in my opinion. And I find myself actually preferring to play on my tablet rather than my PC. I'm only able to play the game on a PC with an MMO mouse, so I can ping the orbs with the corresponding numbers on the side of the mouse. If I didn't have an MMO mouse, I would have no idea how to play this game in a way that makes sense on PC. In that sense, I always give massive props to not just games, but any form of media that designs itself in a way that takes particular advantage of the medium it was designed for, and this game does a great job of creating a game that feels best on mobile. These are the three main mechanics that are the backbone of the game's combat system, and they get so creative with it, and for as crazy as the characters can get, there's free tutorials for every character, where you can try every character, even characters that you don't own yet, so you know the characters you want to try and get. Man, the fact that I have to even stress that you can try characters for free nowadays is kind of depressing. It feels like an angel loses his wings every time I have to say that. After putting more time into the game, it feels like there's a bell curve to how the gameplay feels. When you first start the game, the first character you play as, good old Lucia, has her red ability is a thrusting attack, her blue ability is a buff that makes her attacks do some fire damage, and her yellow ability is this uppercut that will launch enemies into the air, and once they're in the air, you can use auto attacks and other abilities to keep them in the air. She even gets a passive at higher ranks that increases her damage done to airborne enemies. The early game has you killing things like Devil May Cry, and you can kill things with these stylish combos, and it feels really cool. Then you get to the middle of the game, which is kind of where I'm at. You start to experience some of the harder content with the tougher enemies, and get some different characters under your belt, and it starts to get to the point where you can do some stuff on offense, but on defense, you only get one matrix use, and you only have limited dodges, and no block button in the game. And the enemies are getting tougher, so they live past your initial onslaught of attacks. The game starts to feel like an MMORPG in executing a rotation, where you're just trying to do as much damage as possible, and then switch out your characters and do it again. For example, there's a character, Bianca Stigmata. She has this sword staff, and she starts every battle with her weapon in staff form. After executing enough 3 pings and enough damage, you'll get prompted to switch your weapon to sword mode. So then, when you switch to sword mode, you go to town, press all your buttons you have available, and eventually her true alt will come up. And then you use that, and then she goes back to the staff mode. This would be considered like a full rotation. And if you're a free-to-play player, you likely have to switch out at this point and to another character and execute their rotation and use their magic cooldown, and then you switch to the third character and then rotate back to your main attacker to give time for all your units to start rotating and regaining their resources. This is the middle of the bell curve, and this is also steepened by the fact that in the game's main ranking modes, where you rank yourself against other players, you're currently only assessed based on how much damage you can do to enemies in 2 minutes, so it's all about cranking out as many stats as possible and killing things quickly. There are certain points in the game where you can feel the end of the bell curve with the parry mechanic. When you start to learn the game's parry mechanic and juice out your character a little bit more, it then truly starts to feel like an action game again. This game's parry mechanic is if you attack an enemy at the same time as they're attacking, your attacks will clash and you won't take any damage. I haven't been able to do it super consistently, but it also feels that after so many parries, a boss will go down into the stunned state where you can really go to town. There's a mode introduced in the Chinese version that has a very literal, like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry ranking system with a letter grade and everything. You earn points for doing parries, dealing damage without taking damage, and still making it to the end. I think this mode will help introduce the end of the bell curve to more people, with a game mode that rewards more skilled, stylish play, rather than just mashing your buttons very fast. And this experience is what I'm dubbing the PGR skill curve, because this meme is too funny. Unfortunately, the gacha game starts to kick in, as a free player will be able to execute the base rotation, but the more souped up your character, often the more money you spent on a character, will determine if at the end of the rotation you have the resources to immediately go back into a full rotation again. As a free-to-play player, you likely won't regenerate enough resources by the end of the rotation, and you'll likely be better off switching to another character and using their buttons, while your main attacker regains resources in the background. If you wail out a character, their resources will likely regenerate quicker and allow your attacker to stay out stronger, who is likely the most damaging character in your team anyway. While it's definitely not as strong to keep switching out your damage dealer, I almost like having the need to switch and play the other characters, because all the characters in the game have been pretty fun in their own right so far. Most versions of the character Liv are kind of boring, but even she has a few fun variations, where you kind of put the enemies in like this baby cage and beat the hell out of them. Actually, baby cages are kind of a popular mechanic, but are all equally hilarious. I understand the knee-jerk recoil to the word gacha, but something this game made me realize is that as gacha games as a concept exist for longer and longer, when you get into a new one that you enjoy, there's just an overwhelming wealth of content. There's a multitude of modes that don't require the gacha energy system, and they still let you earn relevant rewards and resources. In this game, there's 2 different roguelike modes, which gives you the opportunity to, if you can find them, test out any unit in fairly challenging content. It is from these modes that I learned I wanted to make a fire team at some point, because the characters in the fire team are just so fun. Oh, I don't think I mentioned this, but all characters have some associated element, and you should make teams based on units with similar elements, so that when you're decreasing defenses, you are stripping defenses of the same element that your whole team can take advantage of. I've played this game fairly regularly for almost 2 months now, and I'm still not even close to being caught up with the story. And while yes, gacha games are scary and annoying, what I did not count on is that the longer gacha games are around, the more generous, big air quotes here, they are to free-to-play players in terms of sheer amount of content available. Whether the business practices of each game are friendly are different to each gacha game individually, but just in general, you're going to have a lot to do in the game if you find the base gameplay fun in a gacha that's been around for a while. Alright, that's about as much as I can find it in me to praise gacha games as a genre. So back to Punishing Grey Raven. This game also just throws a ton of different gameplay modes at you. Two standouts that I like are Warzone and Phantom Pain Cage. These are the modes currently available that rank you against other players. Warzone has you in a 2-minute gauntlet of killing as many enemies as possible, and Phantom Pain Cage has you fighting a weekly rotation of bosses, and your goal is to kill the boss as fast as possible while staying as healthy as possible to score the most points in a limited number of attempts. I like the scoring system in a very condensed mode like this, and in an action game it's always fun to see if I can do better than the week before, and it's fun to see where I rank against other players. Then there's some just goofy fun modes. Like for the last event, there was a literal Bejeweled mode with minor difference that was fun to mess around in. And in the current event, there's a beach-themed multiplayer squirt gun fight for the summer that's kind of cute, I guess. And then there's even these dorms where you get Animal Crossing Lite, essentially, and you can put the units that you have into different rooms, and you can decorate the rooms as you see fit. This has very little to do and fold back into the main gameplay of the game. Besides, you can unlock some characters for free, and you can get some upgrade resources from here, but it's a neat little way to interact with the game outside its normal gameplay. The main gameplay, though, is still really where this game shines. There are so many little optimizations the player can make through actual gameplay rather than just pure gacha. In its tutorial modes, I learned that tag-ins count as a 3-ping of the color they're assigned as when they come in. This means that if certain characters have certain abilities that activate when using certain colors, you can use that to switch them in with and move on your merry way. The tutorial also taught me the counter to my least favorite part of the gameplay. Before the tutorial, my major gripe with the combat is that with some attacks from enemies, if you get hit, the hit stun on some abilities and animations that you get locked into from enemies feel like they take an eternity to finish. But the tutorial teaches you that when one character is getting hit by an enemy, you can essentially negate the animation/hit stun by tagging in another character, and your teammate comes in ready to fight immediately. Almost like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite tag-in you can do, and after learning that, the combat feels just amazing. The parrying just feels so sick to pull off, and it's always just an awesome backup defensive mechanic when you've used up all your dodges. I really love just how all aggressive the mechanics in this game are. With the 3 defensive mechanics in the game between dodging, parrying, and being able to switch out of an enemy attack, all of them are in an effort to get you back on the offensive, and it just feels so sick. I think that what I look for most in action RPGs is that sure, leveling up is fun, and making your own build is fun, but I want there to be enough mechanics that through sheer execution alone, there are moments where I can beat bosses and set new high scores without relying only on leveling up alone, and there are most definitely enough mechanics where players' execution can drastically change the outcome of fights. Lastly, I originally wasn't even going to include this in the video, but a new character was just announced and addressed kind of my last complaint with the game. My second and largest complaint in this game was that you can't jump in this game. It literally takes place in just 2 dimensions, the X and Z axis. You can't go up. Some characters kind of jump or leap in the air for their abilities, but it's mostly just for looks. This new character, though, can straight up just jump. And she has a jump with also what looks like a very traditional launcher type move you would see in another action game. And I'm very excited to see how moving and having access to the Y-axis changes the gameplay going forward in the game. Adding jumping was something I was thinking I would want to add if I ever made an action game that leaned on these kind of orb-like mechanics. And I would have the orb abilities be different from being on the ground and in the air. And actually looking closer at some of the footage from her gameplay, she has exactly that. She even has a basic attack as she jumps that will launch an enemy up in the air so you can keep comboing them. Not only this though, she can apparently straight up fly. Before I saw footage of her flying, I had this whole elegant paragraph written out just kind of asking about the ramifications of adding something as simple as jumping to the game's design, but adding up straight up flying asked so many other questions that I just kind of threw it out the window. Only time will answer the plethora of questions asked by adding jumping and flying to this once really 2D game. At the very least, it clearly marks a new era of character strength and capabilities, and I am stoked to see what that feature holds. Thanks for watching this video of me honestly mostly gushing about this fairly unknown game, at least in the circles I'm part of. I've wanted to talk about this game because I've been playing it fairly regularly and enjoying it immensely. This game's unique combat system has really got my gears turning about how I might implement a similar system for an action game. Until next time, remember to stay toasty, and I'll see you in the next video.